Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the weekly Tottenham news review and I am Lee, the Dorset Spur. I'm here to talk to you about all the different stories hitting the headlines over the last 7 days, give you my opinion on those, see what you think, whether you agree with me or not. If you don't already subscribe to the channel, please do consider doing that. If you agree with what I'm saying or you don't agree with what I'm saying, please do consider leaving us some comments and give us your opinion on any of these stories. It'd be good to know what you're thinking as opposed to what I'm thinking. And as I say, if you like the video, do give us a thumbs up. That always helps the old algorithm and all the rest of it. So a few things to talk about, I guess. Starting with last week, the end of the week, start of the week, depending on which way you look at it. Of course, Sunday we played Southampton at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Was there, did see the game live, so which kind of gives you a different perspective maybe than watching it on the TV. You're not so kind of influenced by the pundits and the commentators and stuff like that. You're kind of just watching it yourself. Have to say, obviously really pleased that we got the result. That's exactly what we needed. Moved us back up to 14th after being really low there in 16th and all those kind of fears and frustrations coming back to haunt us. But of course, it's a real difficult one, right? Because we obviously want the points, we want to win games, but at the same time as doing that, we also want to dominate and show a level of performance and play how we expect Tottenham to play. And that's always the balance and always the difficulty in this. Ultimately, we win the game 3-1, but there was a couple of little bits of controversy in there. Of course, we had a goal disallowed through offside. It took forever and a day, especially when you're sitting in the stadium. You're sitting in there, you kind of see the goal in, can't see anything go wrong with it. You're not seeing the replays, you're not seeing anything kind of going on. No one's telling you anything. And of course, the goal's ruled out, you don't know why. 5 minutes as well, really long time, and that just, especially after the Chelsea debacle, to kind of have that same situation again in the very next game was annoying. And ultimately, when you, having come home and watched it, didn't agree with it either. So whether they say they got the right call in the end or not, for me, it's not the right call. It's a ridiculously tight offside that Bergvall is not the person offside. He scores the goal, but we're getting penalised for that. And I'll be clear, I felt the same with the Caicedo goal against us. I didn't feel it was offside. I didn't feel that the goal scorer got any benefit from someone in his team being a smidge ahead of a Tottenham defender. So I'm looking for consistency from that point of view. So that was point number one. The next one after that was the penalty issue. Lot made out of that, obviously. But for me, it's just so simple, right? Matthias Tell is your striker. Solanke's off, he's come on, he's the striker, right? So why would he not take the penalty? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me why anyone's kind of going, well, you know, Johnson's on a hat-trick. It would be nice for him to get an hat-trick. It would be nice for him to get an hat-trick, but it's also nice for us to win the game, right? Because we want the 3 points. At this point in the game, Southampton had scored, which was really annoying because it offered nothing in the game. And a little bit of, you know, nervousness can always creep into that. So when you get the opportunity to put the ball in the back of net and make sure you're winning the game, that's what you've got to do. So for me, it made absolute sense for the striker, who is generally the penalty taker, to take the penalty. There is no room for this sentimental nonsense. You know, it's the same thing when you're talking about players coming and going and all the rest of it. You can't be sentimental about it, and I think that's part of our problem as a club, is that we are sentimental about players, we're sentimental about what we do and all the rest of it, and that then creates this, you know, issue of not being a winning team, I guess. I thought that Brennan Johnson took it really, really well. You know, he didn't kick off. He didn't make a big fuss about it. He wanted to get behind his striker. He wanted to win the game. Of course, he wanted to take it, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, the lad has just scored 2 goals. So he scored 2 goals. You know, that's good enough, right? He's one of our top goal scorers, if not the top goal scorer this season. He's had an unbelievable season, even though he's getting absolutely criticised all the time anyway by the social media experts. But ultimately, it's a good game for him. He played well, got 2 goals, 2 good goals as well. Something that we've been lacking. It is, you know, regardless of what we think of his overall play, because you know, for me, I think he definitely needs to do more. Certainly taking players on, getting crosses in, something he's not really been doing. Something maybe Odegaard does a little bit more of kind of taking people on and running at people. But what Odegaard doesn't do is arrive at the back post as often to put the ball in the back of the net. Now, the previous game he did do that, so he does have that in his locker. So maybe that's the balance of the two. But it was good to have Johnson in there to do what he did, and I understand why Postecoglou feels he is important to his team, because he does bring something else that we don't necessarily have with everybody else. So you have to have options. I'm not saying that he should be a regular starter or number 1 starter or whatever, but he should be within this squad because of what he's bringing. And that's not me being sentimental. If there was someone better than him who we could bring in, then I'll support that, absolutely. And if Brendan Johnson has to move on, then he moves on. But at this moment in time, as part of the squad, I would support him doing what he's doing with the results that he's getting, regardless of his overall performance. I want more from him, definitely. But at this moment in time, we are getting goals, and that's a huge benefit. Next thing I wanted to kind of touch on was the press conferences that Ange Postecoglou is going through. He got, you know, a lot of stick again after the Chelsea one, and so we're coming into this next one ahead of the game against Frankfurt, and straight away the very first question talks about Arsenal fans singing to Real Madrid, "Are you Tottenham in disguise?" Now, I've got to be honest with you. I just really feel that's just lazy clickbaiting journalism. You know, it's not a question. It's not a question. It's just looking for a reaction. And he's getting bushwhacked like this all the time. You know, they tried to turn it into the, you know, are you being considered the whipping boys? Is that good motivation? And blah blah blah. Like, who else is getting this kind of commentary? Who else is getting bantered in this way from journalists? You know, and for me, this is just about catching him out. You then move on to the question about the penalty. And to be fair, he's just said what I said. If you're in the game, you've got to win the game. You want the best penalty taker to take the penalty. And he kind of follows it up when he talks about everything that Tottenham do is considered wrong. You can take the best thing and turn it into, he used the term crap, but in my mind, you know, they take it and they turn it to shit. Everything we do seems to be something that they can banter us on or pick a hole in or have a go at. And this is what's happening with Ange Postecoglou. It doesn't matter what he says in these press conferences. All it does is provide fuel to the people that are Ange out or whatever to kind of pick holes in what he's saying, to try and turn it into something negative and all that. And listen, I'm not knocking anyone. That's their prerogative, right? If they're Ange out, Ange in, that's entirely your call, right? But you've got to try to, and this is me trying to be level-headed and trying to be fair across the board over this. He's not saying anything wrong, in my view. He's pointing out a fact that it doesn't matter what we do as a club, everybody wants to rip us down and pull us down and slag us off and turn it into a negative. And I just cannot disagree with him. I just feel like he's too honest at times. He's asked questions and he answers the questions. He almost needs someone else to come in and be media trained to palm some of this nonsense off. Or someone needs to say to these guys, if you're going to ask stupid questions, we're not even going to answer them. And that would be wrong. Like, he would literally be called out for that. But they're kind of trying to bushwhack him and push him into something to create a click, to create a headline that plays to the narrative of what they're actually looking for. And for me, I just feel this is, totally wrong. If anything, I would stand with Ange on this and say, you're asking a stupid question, you'll get a stupid answer. I think he needs to kind of go, I'm not talking about stuff like that. Move on. Literally go, we've been down this road, move on. Because it's just frustrating to watch. And like I say, it plays into the narrative of a lot of the naysayers or the people that have got an agenda or whatever. And everyone's got an opinion, right? And I'm not saying anyone's opinion's incorrect, but everyone's got an opinion about, this kind of thing. But we live it, right? As a Tottenham fan, I live it. I get bantered all the time by people. And, a friend of mine said, people have stopped bantering him now. They genuinely feel sorry for him as a Tottenham fan. And it's kind of a bit like that. You're just going through the ringer all the time. And that's why it's important for the players to really step up and do what they need to do, because at the moment, we're just not getting that. I do think, these press conferences, I do watch them because I do genuinely, whether I like Ange as the manager, his tactics and some of the things he does is one thing, but I do respect him as a human being, as a man, and I've got empathy for how he's being treated. He's being hung out to dry all the time. Questions about managers coming in, Pochettino, now the Arsenal thing, and decisions about penalties, and it's all just trying to get those clicks. But listen, what do I know? Let me know what you think. Is he naive in answering the way he does? Is he too honest? Should he say to people, I'm not answering that question, that's not a question, I'm not answering, let's talk about the football and move on? I don't know, you tell me what you think. So of course, next up after the interviews, we need to talk about last night's game. Of course, we were quarter-final, first leg against Frankfurt at White Hart Lane, under the lights. Atmosphere sounded really, really good most of the time. It's interesting, isn't it, that the away fans are allowed to come in, bring drums, bring megaphones and God knows what else. Some of them, not last night, but some of them have been in with flares and all the rest of it. And yet, if you go in with a bottle of Coke, you have to take the lid off. I mean, it's crazy, really, when you think about the difference between how home fans and away fans are treated, the way football is in Europe as opposed to how it is in England. How we are mollycoddled and stopped from having a good time, and then they complain that there isn't an atmosphere. There's no atmosphere in English football anymore. I wonder why. Anyway, listen, this game, biggest game of the season so far, of course, because Ange is under an awful lot of pressure, that we're having a terrible season in the Premier League. We did okay in the Carabao Cup, but obviously out of the FA Cup and so on. So really, our only opportunity for any kind of redemption in this terrible season that we're having. And we really needed a good, solid win with a couple of goal margin to help us, because going to Frankfurt is going to be difficult. The fans are going to be up for it. They've got a really good atmosphere there. But of course, as you know, 1-1 draw, and it could have been an awful lot worse. Obviously, they get a really poor goal. Great goal for them. Poor goal for us to concede early in the game, 6 minutes, I believe. It's a key. I don't know, I can't remember how to say it. But anyway, again, long ball over the top, played out wide. Defence is getting back, but the lad takes a shot from outside of the box and just manages to curl it around and into the bottom corner. Vicario can't get close enough to it, and of course it's all to play for. I was literally sitting there next to Ollie, my mate, and as soon as they played that ball, I went, here we go, 1-0, and sure enough, there it was, 1-0, and I was absolutely furious because it's exactly what we didn't need. I did feel that we would probably concede a goal, but actually really didn't want us to. I really wanted us to take command of this game, because we started okay-ish, but again, really cautious, really cagey first half, really kind of, I don't know. The goal for them came from Maddison, yet again, playing for a free kick. He's up there, he falls over, he's playing for a free kick, didn't get it, and then of course the transition is, and then you're right, the goal's in the back of the net, the ball's in the back of the net. And so yet again, a game where I really wanted Maddison to turn up. I really didn't feel that he did. Certainly in that first half, I thought he was, not strong enough, not tough enough to kind of make. See, sometimes when I say tough enough, I mean tough enough in himself to ride a challenge, to push through a challenge. Not the Maddison who makes a stupid challenge, a nasty little niggle challenge sort of thing, which he does. He has that in his locker. What I'm talking about is him being strong enough on the ball to maintain it, to not get knocked off of it so easily. He plays for those free kicks and he doesn't always get them. It's always rolling around holding his ankles, and it's just frustrating, because that if he kind of pushed on, he would do better. He would have got more out of that. And like I say, it gets turned over, and the next thing you know, the ball's in the back of the net, and I'm looking back over here and going, that's on you, because we're pushing up to try to, attack their ball, and you're giving it away far too easily. But of course, he gets his redemption in the fact that he was able to claim an assist for Pedro Porro's excellent goal, and we were off our seats when he scored that goal. Nice little back heel between his legs, and the keeper's got no chance, and brings us back into the game. But of course, a lot of that was made by Solanke, who yet again is like an unsung hero, who works so hard for the team, gets himself all over the pitch, running constantly, chasing the ball down and chasing players down, and trying to help with assists and stuff. Doesn't get the credit that I think he deserves a lot of the time. I mean, great for Porro to score that goal, because it was a big call. So when I was looking at the starting lineup, the big call for me was the fact that Spence wasn't playing. I got a WhatsApp group like most of people, and WhatsApped in there and said, big shout not having Spence in there, because he's been our best defender and one of our best players since he's been regular in the team. So really surprised that he was left out. Personally, I would have gone for him for Udogie, because I think he's really good coming in on his cutting inside. I felt that the Porro start was I thought he'd probably go for him, because out of all the players, he's one of the players who can put a ball into the box for Solanke or someone to attack. So I thought, well, maybe that's why he's put him in. I do like Spence on the left-hand side. I do think he brings a lot, but he obviously can play well on the right as well. But maybe he doesn't cross the ball as well, maybe as Porro in terms of attacking, and maybe that's why the decision was made. Now, I have to say, Destiny Udogie yesterday probably had his best game of the season so far. I mean, I know he's been out injured, and I know he was injured at the end of last season, and up until the injury last season, I thought he was really, really good, really, really good. Got injured, out a long time, hasn't really got that fall back. And so for me, Spence had kind of taken over where he left off and looked the better option. But last night, I thought he did really, really well, played really, really well. He was up and down that line all the time, chasing the ball down, chasing players down, getting the ball across and so on. So I was really impressed with him. So, you know, I'll hold my hands up and say Ange was right in terms of his team selection to start the game. Maybe we were just a little bit too cautious, a little bit too lacking in terms of really going for it. I did think the referee did spoil the game to a certain extent. He gave us absolutely nothing yesterday. There was lots of potential free kicks we didn't get, even corners, you know. Even corners, we didn't even get corners when they were clearly corners. So that was really, really frustrating. There was a lot of stop-start and that in the game, and it kind of broke up the flow, especially when in the second half where we were really dominant. Certainly in the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, we were really dominant. The brilliant Bergvall hit the crossbar with a great shot. He played really, really well yesterday. I thought he was probably the best player, our best player on the pitch. Him and Udogie, I think, probably the best players that we put out. And then, of course, there was a cross for Bentancur who hit the crossbar as well, sort of straight after that. And after that, Son got a good save out of the goalkeeper. Probably the only thing that Son did the whole game. I was a bit, again, disappointed with him. I feel like I'm calling out the same players all the time with Son and Maddison, you know, key leaders in the squad, and I don't feel like they are really at the top of their game at the moment. And we are relying on players like Bergvall and Sarr and Udogie and Spence and that to really kind of, you know, get us through. But, you know, to be honest with you, it's like the goalkeeper situation. It's almost like their goalkeeper is their captain, I believe, and their best player, and he's out. But then they bring the understudy in, who probably has his best game. You know, he pulled off a few decent saves, a couple of really good ones, and kept them in it. And that's really, really frustrating. And I do wonder whether we will, you know, rue those chances missed, because, you know, on another day, you could probably, you know, win that game 3 or 4-1. And it's just that, you know, they defended very deep. And they worked really hard. Now, over into Germany, they're going to have to play a lot stronger. They're going to have to be a little bit more expansive and stuff. So defensively, we're going to have to be better. But will that give us space? Will that give us the space to try and create? Will Maddison be the man to step up and really pull the strings? Will Kulu be back, perhaps, and Kulu be able to kind of sit in that place and make something happen? It'll be interesting to see where that goes. And again, the other positive about last night was, you look at the bench and he was able to bring on Tel for Son, he was able to bring on Sarr for Maddison, and Spence for Udogie, all decent. And of course then as well he was able to bring on Richarlison for a few minutes to get him back into sort of playing football. So hopefully by next Thursday potentially Kulu could be on the bench and he could play some minutes at some point. So, you know, all is not lost. The stay of execution for Ange continues. Had we lost that game sort of 3 or 4-0, I think he would have probably been out the door straight after next Thursday. But I think this one gives him that opportunity to keep going and see whether there's enough about him to be able to pull this off. It would be a very Spursy season for that to happen, wouldn't it? If we were to win the Europa League with a manager that increasingly is under pressure. Which kind of brings me on to my next point. And I think this is like episode 4 of this segment in Chris's channel. And yet again, we're having to talk about managerial change and the stories that are going around all the time. So Iriola is still the absolute favourite. Frank is still in there. Silva's still in there. And now they've added Oliver Glasner to the list. Apparently he's not happy at Palace. He's not happy with the money he's able to spend and the ambition of the club, which is ironic if you think that's going to work when you come to Tottenham. So again, I don't believe any of it, and I have to say I'm not inspired by any of this. I'm not inspired by any of this. I recognise that we need to have some level of stability. We have to have a plan, a longer term plan. We can't just keep going 2 seasons and you're out. You know, we need to look further than that and build and build and build. And Postecoglou himself has said, even if I win the Europa League, I'm gone anyway. That's what everyone is saying. It's being written and all the rest of it. So even he kind of is seeing all this stuff, which is a bit disappointing, really, because you think, well, this is a person. You know, if you were doing a job and someone was behind you constantly, every week, every day, almost saying who's going to be your replacement, and the fact that you're not doing a good job and all the rest of it, that's tough. It is tough mentally. I don't care what anyone says. That hits your self-esteem and so on and so forth. And this is a human being, you know. So I'm not overly keen on all of that. But again, I'm not inspired by any of those on the list. I don't think that brings any level of change to where we currently sit. I don't think we're going to change our way. I don't think we're going to change our spending habits. I think ultimately we are, you know, just basically going to hope that the next manager can get more out of a squad than the previous manager. And I'm looking at those and I'm like, where's the evidence that that's really going to happen? I don't know. I just don't see it. Ange himself said that he was brought in to revitalise the squad because it needed changing, it needed updating, and we have started down that road. Like I've said many times previously in my own channel, the amount of players left from previous times is diminishing, you know, season by season. I think it's only like Son and Davis who are kind of still hanging around from previous. Son, I feel like he's probably coming to the end of his time, and Davis, I think he's just a really good professional who great to have around the squad as a backup, but not someone who you're going to be playing regularly, which is what's being shown from his point of view. As he gets older, but he's doing what he's asked of him, and you can't complain about that. So in terms of revitalising the squad, the players that we've brought in, you know, your Archie Grays, your Bergvalls, your Yang, the other dad who comes in the summer. You know, there's you know, youngsters coming in there changing the squad and so on. He was also asked to change the style, which he did, certainly in the first 10 games last season. Not so much since then, with all the injuries and with the problems that we've had, but certainly going from a counter-attacking team to a more forward attack-minded team, something that we've always wanted. We've kind of called out the Tottenham style. Of course, we still need to be defensively strong, but at the same time as that, we need to play with flair and we play, you know, on the front foot. We haven't seen too much of that, but I mean, that's what he was brought in to try to do, and up to a point did do that. And of course the final one is to bring success. Now that's a tough ask for a team that's not really been consistently winning at anything for 40 years, to be fair. You can talk about the odd successes, 91 and 99, 2008, whatever, but realistically they're odd wins here and there in competitions. We haven't really consistently won anything since the 80s, and that's not something someone can do very, very quickly. It needs time. It needs to get us back. I think losing Pochettino the way we did, not supporting him the way we did, has basically set us back probably 10 years, to be honest with you. And that's the concern. If you go backwards so far, how long do you give it before you're back to where you need to be? So I still think there's a lot of work to do. Whether it's Ange or whether it's somebody else who continues to build this squad, I still feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of building the squad. Which then brings me on to kind of my final kind of story or point around last week. All these players that are now being touted around other clubs. So we've got Van der Ven being said that he's good enough. His agent is saying he's good enough to play for Real Madrid. Yeah, okay. We know that. What's that got to do with anything? Why do we need to start touting him around? The boy's been injured for most of the last 2 seasons. So yeah, he is good enough, but he plays for Tottenham. He's signed to Tottenham. He shouldn't be being touted out. You need to focus on being good at Tottenham and building on that fitness and being able to play regular football before you start touting a player out to Real Madrid. Destiny Udogie, apparently now Manchester City are after him, and again, really good player, out for a major part of last season, out for a bit this season, yet to get back to his best football. I think he's got a lot to prove before we say, he's the sort of player that Man City should be trying to take off of us. And of course, Sarr talking about always wanting to play for big clubs and all the rest of it. Now listen, I listen to all this stuff, right? And when it happens, it happens. Good players will always be touted around by their agents because it's all about money, right? He'll be touted around everywhere and anywhere that will have him. But the reality is they're under contract. They're under contract with us. They need to prove themselves and do their utmost for us. I don't want to lose Van der Ven. I don't want to lose Udogie. I don't want to lose Sarr. Those players are key young players around developing and revitalising this squad. You cannot have these players coming in and then start trading them off left, right and centre. The next one on that list as well is Kulu. Apparently he's really wanted in Italy because of having played in Italy before and so on and so on. Again, Kulu is integral to this team. He's been, up until his injury, he was our player of the season in my view. So all of these players, they obviously all have a price on their head that would be great to receive. But I don't believe the club are looking to sell these players. They're looking to build something. Because if you start selling these players, then your project is going nowhere and you're starting again. We need to be adding to these, not taking away from. So for me, I just think this is paper talk. It's clickbait. It's the same old thing constantly. Whenever there's a decent player for Tottenham, everyone's being targeted to go somewhere else. Sarr and his comment about playing for big club, I get that, right? They all kind of say that, and it's probably been taken out of context. He was probably referring to the fact that he's at a big club. But listen, I try not to take too much notice of any of all that sort of stuff until a player is officially left. Still treat them like they're a Tottenham player and they want to play. As long as they're putting in the effort for Tottenham. Udogie did last night, Van der Ven did last night, Sarr did against Chelsea. These guys, are playing decent football. And so, of course, when anyone's any good, they're always going to be touted. But for me, I think these agents should be doing what agents do and stay in the background and do their job when their job is asked to be done of them. When a player is asked to be sold or wants to be sold, when a club wants to sell a player, that's when you get involved in that. We shouldn't be trying to unsettle clubs and players and all the rest of it. On the other front, you've got, there is stories about Matisse Tell. Apparently now they're saying unlikely to sign for Tottenham at the end of the season because of his performances. I think that's a bit unfair. The lad's barely had a chance to really show what he's got. Barely played football last season, at the beginning of the season at Bayern. Hence the reason why he wanted to move. We worked really hard to get him. I'd be surprised if he gets sent back straight away. I think, I think he's likely to stay. In my view, I think he's rated. I think he's a talent for the future. He's 19 years of age. So, not very far off of Lucas Bergvall or Archie Gray, right? So for me, I think it would be a surprise if he was moved on as quickly as he is. The other one, of course, is Timo Werner. Now, I've made my feelings very clear about Timo Werner, even on Chris's panel shows. I didn't think that he was the right sort of player we should have signed in the summer. I appreciate he'd been injured and probably still had a bit more to show. But for me, I thought that Werner wasn't good enough. I didn't think he contributed enough. And again, been out injured for a long period. He just hasn't worked for him at Tottenham. He hasn't shown what he needs. And for me, I'd be happy to see him leave. People use there's been a comment about paying top wages. You get top players. Timo Werner's our highest earning player, and we haven't had a top player have it. So I don't always think there is a correlation between the two. You can pay massive wages and pay massive fees for players, but it doesn't guarantee that they're gonna be any good. So it's just interesting. And the final one is Lucas Bergvall. Is that the club are looking for him to sign a longer term deal, which I think is absolutely spot on, the right thing to do. I think he's a real talent, and I'd be gutted if he was to move on for sure. But again, coming from the Swedish league into the first team, playing more football than was expected for him to play, which is why I think Archie Gray is probably not getting any football at the moment, because he's played an awful lot of football so far this season, and I think it makes sense for him to kind of take a break and develop, because we don't want to burn these guys out too soon in their careers. We've seen that all too often with young players playing too much football, getting too much responsibility too early on in their careers, and then it not working out for them later on. I think Dele Alli is a prime example of that, and of course we all wish Dele Alli well in his endeavours in Italy. So just a few sort of stories in there. If you've got any comments or any views on any of these topics, please do feel free to hit me up in the comment section. Always read them and take on board what you're saying. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. It'd be good to know that people are enjoying this series that we've put together. And of course, please do subscribe to Chris's channel. If you like what I do and you want to see more of me, I'm leader Dorset Spur, and you will find me on YouTube. Happy to have you come along and join me as a subscriber. I'll be happy to have you. So anyway, as always, I'll leave it there, and as we always say, up the Spurs.